Hey everybody, welcome back to Sounds Like a Drum, Cadence Independent Media production. Today, we are going to discuss the perils and the promise of experimenting with thicker Reso heads on your toms. To start off, the heads that we're using today, we have some pretty standard batters for us here. We're using coated G12s on top. And then on the Reso, we're moving between a 10mm G1 and a 12mm G12. G1s are a 10mm head, as I said before. They are kind of thought of as the industry standard in terms of thickness, and a G12 is adding 20% more to this thickness. This means that we're working with more tension to achieve the same pitch, the behavior of the head is going to be a little bit different, and the awesome tuning range of each of these is going to also be slightly different. Now first up, let's hear these drums with the G12 as a Reso. Our goal today in demonstrating the differential between these heads is that there's a much larger range in a given drum than we might think when we start to experiment with the heads that we choose. And when I say range, I mean in terms of primarily pitch. How high do you tune it, how low do you tune it, and how usable are those ranges? Today, we are going for low, low, low. We want to go as low as we can. We're looking for punchy, fat, just thick sounds out of these toms today. Utilizing a 12mm Reso rather than a standard 10, we have to add more tension to get that thicker head to the same pitch as we would if we were using the standard 10. This means that the sound of the head, the behavior of the head, and the interaction between the Reso and the batter are all going to be slightly different. What we're after here is a Reso that's going to speak and behave well at a very, very low tuning. And if you're familiar with 10mm heads, there are probably times in your practice or playing life where you've discovered that you couldn't tune it low enough to get the sound you wanted without it starting to flap and make strange sounds and interact weirdly with the batter. Now, let's compare that to the same pitches, but with a G1 as Resos instead. At this same pitch, but with less tension on the Reso head, we are starting to hear some of what we were talking about earlier, some noise and distortion and flappiness in that head, especially when you start to hit it really hard. And in musical scenarios where you want to have a low sound and also be able to really throttle the drums and hit them as hard as you want, having something with a little more mass on bottom gives us the opportunity to tune the whole drum down into this lower range without adding any strange noise into our sound. Now, if this whole mass versus tension versus pitch thing is starting to get a little bit confusing, a good visual for me, and hopefully for you, is thinking about a guitar. The strings on the lower pitched side are thicker, and the strings on the higher pitched side are thinner. You could even extend this into a bass guitar, or if you've ever looked inside of a piano. Functionally, more mass is more effective for lower tunings. 10mm Resos are essentially the industry standard for a reason. They are incredibly versatile. They handle medium tunings fantastically. They can go very, very high, and they can handle low tunings pretty well as well. But any head that we have is going to have limitations. There's no right thing for everything any more than there's a right drum for anything else. In this scenario, we are addressing the very edge limitations of these 10mm heads. And similarly, if you're using a G12 as a Reso, there's going to be other limitations that you're going to run into. The Venn diagram, it crosses over, but there's choky things that can happen with heavier heads in the same way that it is with batters. But the fabulous thing about getting into these experiments with the Resos is that the top head stays the same. We're dealing with the same pitches on the batters, the same feel, but we are adjusting from underneath the behavior and the sound of the drum. It's worth noting that from a player perspective, the feel of hitting these drums is not actually any different between the 12 and the 10. I hit them all a lot. Ben played them too. They're not really any different in terms of the feel and the sensation of playing, which is a huge part of an effective change to your kit. You don't want to necessarily have it suddenly feel awkward and uncomfortable, especially if you have something important coming up that you want to do with your drums. Now, at the end of the day, if you're happy with the sound of your drums, you might ask yourself, why? Why would I do this? Why is this important? What's it going to give me? What this gave me today, and this was also an experiment for us here, is that I realized a portion of the tuning range of these drums that I've played for hundreds of hours that I'd never heard before, and in particular had never heard as usable before. In addition to allowing us to tune lower, it also alters the sustain a little bit, it alters the resonance a little bit. It effectively, if I were blindfolded, is giving me a new set of drum sounds that I haven't heard before. And no matter if you have a lot of kits or if you just have one, or if you have favorite heads or you use whatever you happen to find, doing this kind of thing intentionally can actually expand your palette without having to buy more drums and without having to tinker too much with everything that's going on. Just change out the heads, maybe tune them the same way you normally tune them, and just check out the difference, because they contribute more to the sound of the drums than you might think. And there's a lot of inspiration in the Reso heads, even though we never see them. And they're basically like, they're the unsung heroes of the toms and frankly the rest of the kit too. Now, chances are pretty likely that the Resos on your toms are 10mm. Not 100%, definitely, but it's a statistical likelihood. And whether they're high-end drums or low-end drums, they are the standard. Now, if you are a person who likes to plumb the depths of low tuning and are doing fine, That's lovely, but if you're trying to go lower and you're frustrated with the sound and you're getting ugly stuff out of the drum trying to get into that range, moving to a thicker Reso head is a great choice just to see how low your drums can actually go. It is also worth noting that we could have spent a ton of time with tuning with the G1s on the bottom to get in the ballpark of what we were looking for, or we could have resorted to a lot of muffling on the top, maybe also the bottom. But then we're dealing with muffled drums. And if the goal here is to get wide open, to get loud, and to get full, choosing heads and choosing tuning and tensioning that gets the sound is what we're looking for. It is also physics that we're talking about here. Even if we did agonize over that tuning, because of physics, there's no way that we could make that exact sound if we were using the wrong heads for that. In the same way that if you put guitar strings on a bass or bass strings on a guitar and try to tune it up, it's just not going to work. It's fair to say that the shortest distance from where we are to a successful sound is making sure that we choose the right gear. That includes things like drum heads. And if there's a best choice for that, for a sound that you're trying to make, rather than fussing and hemming and hawing with the things you have, or even just the things that you know, try experimenting, follow the physics, and in the end, you're going to get what you were looking for in the first place with a lot less fuss. All right, that sums up for today. Thank you so much for watching and checking out this experimentation with Reso heads. I hope it was useful for you. I learned a lot today too. This was something I was looking forward to. It's been super fascinating. Please like, comment, subscribe, and click the notification bell for all of our new videos. And please, please, please follow the link below to our Patreon, where we have the Cymbal series and lots of extra content from everything that we do around here. And lastly, we would love to know what you use for Reso heads on your toms, particularly if they are not 10 mil, and how you got there, why you got there, and why they make you happy.